There are 6 go-to pricing models for agencies. So how do you choose the right one, and what happens if you get it wrong? I ran my agency for 12 years before exiting, and in that time I've used nearly all of these models. Some work really well, and some cost me a lot of time and money before I understood why. I wish someone had told me at the start that there's no best model. Every one of them works when it fits your specific situation, and every one of them will fail when it doesn't. So the stage you're at and the level you're playing at determines which model is the best fit for you. And the mistake that I think most agency owners make is copying advice blindly instead of choosing for their specific stage and situation. So in this video, I'll walk you through all 6 pricing models for agencies. I'll let you know when each model is the right choice for you and some of the risks to look out for. And at the end, I'll give you a 7th pricing model that I think we're going to see much more of in future. Let's start where nearly every agency begins, charging per hour or per day. For a newer agency, this is often a smart place to begin because it offers decent protection from common issues such as scope creep. If you haven't yet mapped out your delivery process and you don't really know what kind of problems tend to come up or how long things can take, charging for your time covers you whilst you learn this. It's also very easy to sell because everybody knows how long an hour is, and the only question is whether the client is happy with the price attached to that unit of time. But there is, of course, a big risk to take note of, and that's that hourly or day rates are anti-efficiency. In other words, the better you get, the more it works against you. Every time you improve and get faster, you deliver the same result in less time. And this, of course, means that theoretically, you should be charging the client less for that work. There are 2 common fixes. One is honest, where you basically put your rates up, but now the risk is that a client sees a bigger number attached to each unit of time at the pre-sale stage and might think you're too expensive even when you'd actually do the work quicker than another option who comes in cheaper. And the second way, which is less honest, but also very common in the agency world, is that you end up padding out your hours or doing more work in order to maintain the ability to charge the client the same, even though you become more efficient. Whilst this is in some way dishonest, it's very easy to understand why an agency would be tempted to do this to protect their interests. Because of anti-efficiency, charging for time is a great place to start, but as soon as you establish a proven workflow, it's best to move away from it to start to reward efficiency and increase your margins. Another pricing model, and also quite popular for agencies in their early years, is fixed fee or project-based pricing. This can be really effective because now you're charging for an outcome and not necessarily the time or resources involved in getting to the outcome. And therefore you can naturally bake in more profit margin, which you can't always do when you're charging for time. But this does come with a risk, and that is that you really need to know how long things take to deliver the thing that you're charging for, because if you underprice it and the work drags on, then every time things drag, the longer it drags, the more margin is disappearing from your project. It's very easy for things like scope creep to come in and quickly destroy any profit margin. And so it takes discipline to be able to say no to those extra requests when they come in, or you need to know how to handle them properly. One way to protect yourself against this is to price per milestone. So you give an estimate for the whole project, and then you break that down so that you're not completely exposed to a fixed price. This works particularly well with larger projects or projects that span over a longer time frame. If any scope creep occurs or additional work is requested, you can schedule the work and adjust the price for the next billing cycle. And so this offers some extra protection. One thing about working on a completely fixed fee or project basis is that you have to look out for the feast and famine type existence, where you go out and win lots of work, and then naturally your sales activity starts to take a dip because you take your foot off the gas, because now you actually have to deliver that work. And so because you have no capacity to deliver anything else that might close, what happens is you're feasting. But as those projects come to an end, you'll realize that you have to then ramp up the sales activity. And because that doesn't always happen overnight, you can easily slip into a famine period where you're not billing as much as you'd like, and your P&L can start to look scary, and things like stress start to come into play. It's easy to make poor decisions in famine mode, and that's something that you really have to look out for with this pricing model, particularly if it's your only or dominant model for your agency. Next up is retainers, which give you predictable monthly income, and that's why it's so popular with agencies. We love the safety net of MRR, or monthly recurring revenue. And you can understand why, because clients are charged month to month, ideally with some sort of contract in place, a notice period for any cancellations, and therefore the revenue graph is smoother as a result. It brings a lot of peace of mind knowing what's coming in each month. But there are dangers, and the most common one is where agencies effectively sell what really is just a bundle of hours wrapped up into something that they call a retainer. And if this is the case, then that agency is really just charging for time. And so the risks of charging for time still apply, in the sense that the more efficient you get, the less you should be charging. And of course, in reality, you don't want to charge less, so you begin to fill those hours with other work. And you can really end up in this spiral where you just end up doing more and more, but can't maintain the level of intensity. And because of this, a retainer can start really well, but it can very quickly become stale, awkward, or highly unprofitable as the relationship continues. You have to work really hard to ensure that you're very clear on what the retainer entails, and when the targets change or the goalposts are moved, there needs to be an adjustment in the agreed retainer fee. So selling an ongoing outcome or access to your team or expertise is a good example of a retainer, whereas charging for time but wrapping those hours up under the disguise of a retainer is a poor example. Now, this one is one of the first models where you can really start to charge a premium, and that is productized pricing. A productized pricing model is when you know every part of your workflow inside out from end to end. You need to know exactly what you do, the time it takes, the problems, the issues, and have a really high confidence that you can get the output. And ideally, you need to have this all ironed out in advance of changing to this model. However, when you get this clarity, it's one of the best models because you're highly rewarded for efficiency, unlike when you charge for time. The difference between fixed fee and project-based pricing is that a productized model is highly repeatable and therefore very, very efficient. Fixed fee or per project pricing tends to have customization, and it's the repeatability that really pays. The more efficient you become at delivering your process, the more profit margin you make, because the price stays fixed to the outcome, not the input of hours or work going in. That's why it can only really work if the process is a very well-oiled machine from end to end. And you have to be really disciplined on things like scope creep, customization requests, or anything that can break that repeatability. And that can be really difficult, especially for newer agencies or agency owners that don't have a strong enough pipeline, because every time you say no to any client work, it can feel like you're losing out. So this model is very effective, but it does take real discipline. And it's not always the right place to start, in my opinion. Normally, it's best to earn your way to a productized pricing model once you've gone through enough repetitions of your delivery to know how to price it and to profit from it every single time. The other premium model is value-based pricing. And this is where you price on the value of the outcome to the client, which is completely detached from time or even the deliverables. Effectively, you're charging for the value of the problem that you're solving or the reward that you're gaining for the client. When value-based pricing is done right, it can pay better than any other pricing model, but it does come with the biggest requirement of them all, and that's that you need a bulletproof model for it to work. Nobody is going to pay a significant premium if they're not 99% certain that you can deliver on your promise. You need to be incomparable to other options that are out there that might also be in the pitch for the work that you're going for. If somebody can compare you to other options, then your fee is likely to stand out for all the wrong reasons. Which is why for value-based pricing to work, you really need to be uniquely different. That's often signaled by very strong niching, endless case studies of you achieving an outstanding outcome, or by having a genuinely unique and instantly recognizable style that people are just willing to pay a premium for. And for these reasons, it tends to be a model that can fail very quickly. But if it works, it tends to come later in the journey of your agency once you've earned the right to use it. And then there's performance-based pricing, where you tie part or all of your fees to the result that you actually deliver. And the upside can be really big. You can make very high margins here because you're backing yourself and sharing in the win with your client. But this is a high risk, high reward model, and some of the risks involve needing watertight agreements, because what performance means is full of gray areas, and relationships can sour very quickly if things aren't black and white and agreed up front. In particular, attribution can be tricky and sometimes difficult to prove, like who was responsible for the lead, who was responsible for the sale. It's also worth noting that cash flow is important too. You might get the outcome, but how long does it take you to get paid from the client? So the client might get the sale, but they're waiting to get paid, and then you're waiting to get paid. And this can often result in a cash flow lag for your own agency. And the obvious risk is that you just don't get the outcome, and yet you still have people and bills to pay. It's grey areas like this that can cause real friction if you haven't agreed the answers up front or agreed how to handle them. Performance-based pricing can pay exceptionally well, but it's probably the most contractually demanding and risky model. But if you do get it right, you can earn a real premium for being sure of the outcome that you can prove and sharing in that risk and having skin in the game. And that brings me to the 7th model, which is kind of a bonus for this video, but it's one that I think we'll see a lot more of in the near future. And that's usage-based pricing. As AI agents start to handle more of the lower level execution work, I think agencies will start to sell access to those agents and bill their clients based on how much they're using. More like a utility than a retainer, and it really fits ongoing work really well. So things like error monitoring, hygiene tasks, auditing, competitor research, or any task that an agent can run autonomously and continuously on the client's behalf, where you're billing on the volume of work rather than the hours or any fixed fee. However, again, this does come with some risks, and the main one is predictability. Clients get really nervous when a bill can change in price. And that's one of the things that people really dislike about cloud usage, for example. You can end up with a bill that you just don't expect. So I believe the agencies that will get the most success from this model will start here, but they'll begin to cap it or bundle it into another pricing model to be able to make it more transparent for clients while still being able to maintain a healthy margin. But look out for this one, because I do think it's coming. And it's worth thinking about how it could apply to your own agency over the coming years. So there they are, 6 pricing models that agencies use today, and a 7th that's maybe coming soon. And the thing to take away from this isn't that any one of them is the best. It's that the right model is the one that matches where your agency is right now. Your proof, your process, your pipeline, and your appetite for risk, all of it decides which one fits. If you get it right, things can take off very quickly for you. But if you get it wrong and copy someone whose situation looks nothing like yours, and you will feel it in your margins and stress levels. And that's not what we're about here at GTFO. So if you'd like help choosing the right model, amongst other things for your agency to increase profit and time freedom, book a call in with me following the link below. Until next time, don't forget to give me a like, follow and subscribe. I'm a new channel trying to build things, and I'll see you next week for more insights for your agency. Cheers.